I really encourage you to listen to the talks. They make a difference. When you listen to the talks, they're giving you more and more insight into what you're doing in meditation, and the talks are giving you more and more insight into what it means to be awake, the difference it makes to be awake, what being awake is all about in terms of well-being. Well-being means, a state of well-being means that you are in a state of mental well-being, in the sense that the mind is calm, the mind is relaxed. You're in a state of physical well-being in the sense that the body is calm, the body is relaxed. This is well-being. The way it adds up is that when you're in a state of well-being, you're experiencing a state of calm, a state of peace. When you're in a state of well-being, you're experiencing a state of satisfaction, a state of contentment, a state of fulfillment. Fulfillment means that you don't want anything. You know, you're fulfilled. You don't need anything. You don't want anything. And when you're having this experience of well-being in which you don't need anything and you don't want anything, you're having an experience of awareness itself. The awareness that is the natural state, the awareness that is your true nature, our true nature. When you calm the mind and relax the body, there begins to be access, there begins to be an awareness of awareness itself. There begins to be this, when you get the body relaxed and the mind calm enough, if you're aware of it, you're paying attention, you'll notice something shifts into this state of being. When you're sitting there meditating, something shifts and you're in this state of being instead of a state of thinking, instead of a state of being in the form of a person, instead of this state of being in the form of a body. This may not happen in the very beginning if you're practicing, but you have to establish a consistent practice, and sooner or later it's inevitable that you will begin to become aware of being aware. That's the practice. Meditation's about being aware of being aware, and then noticing that the awareness that you're aware of is your nature, is what you are. This isn't the identity that you have been experiencing yourself as. You've been experiencing yourself to be a physical body and a personality. And that's the common way that human beings are experiencing themselves, as a personality and a physical body. And so most of humanity does not experience well-being, because well-being is an experience that is natural when you're being what you are, which is awareness itself. So most human beings are having a different experience than well-being. Most human beings, most of humanity is experiencing what's called neurosis, right? This is very important to understand, because everybody in the normal course of events, everybody has the idea that humanity in general is in a state of normality, right? Humanity in general is in a state of, normal, sane, conscious, awake. That's the understanding that people have about the experience that humanity's having. But the experience humanity is having could more correctly be known as neurosis, a mental condition that is not caused by organic disease, involving symptoms of stress, depression, anxiety, obsessive behavior, hypochondria, but not a radical loss of touch with reality compared with psychosis. So neurosis is a mental condition. It's not normality. It is taken to be normal because everybody's crazy, and if everybody's crazy, nobody's crazy, right? This is important for you to understand, so that you no longer find it acceptable to be normal, because normal's not normal. All you have to do is look around to see what the evidence says. If everybody's normal, how come everybody's so weird? If everybody's normal, how come the world is in the shape it's in? If everybody's normal, would it be normal to kill each other? That's called war. Would it be normal to be in conflict with the people you love? Would that be normal? And yet most of us are off and on in conflict with other people around us, off and on in conflict with the people that we love. When we get together for holidays, we try and contain ourselves, right? So we don't let our neurosis out. Because if you sit there and you allow the voice in your head to use your mouth and you say what you're thinking, it won't be long before there's trouble, right? Because the thoughts you're having are not normal. The thoughts that human beings are having are not normal. They come from a misunderstanding about what they are. Right? The thoughts that most humanity is having is coming from a misunderstanding about what they are. Most people consider the voice in their head to be them thinking. This is a bad, bad mistake, because not only is it not you thinking, but it will drive you crazy. How can it be you thinking unless you're up to driving yourself crazy, right? How can it be you thinking when it comes time to go to bed at night and sleep, you can't sleep because the voice in your head doesn't care whether you get any sleep? How can this be normal? How can it be normal that you're going through your everyday life without anybody threatening you, right? Without any real threat to your physical existence, not even any real threat to your psychological existence, and yet you go through your average day paranoid, you know? Your thoughts are thoughts about, you know, other people, what they're doing. When you wake up in the morning, the most important thing for you that day is to get through it. That's how people live, right? When Monday morning comes, the most important thing for you is to get through to the hump, Wednesday, right? And then the next thing is to get through to Friday, right? Friday's a much better day than Monday. Everybody knows that, right? And then you enjoy Saturday, but Sunday about noon, you start getting anxious again because it's getting closer to the beginning of the week. This is insane. This is insane. So you're not living your life, you know, you're living some kind of story about your life, right? The voice in your head is telling you stories all the time about what's happening, isn't it? It's describing what's happening all the time to you. And because you're busy paying attention to the voice in your head that's describing all the time what's happening, you're not there for your life. You're there for a conversation about your life, and you're not living your life. You're living in a conversation about life that's not life. And therefore, it's not very fulfilling. And therefore, it's not going to produce well-being, because this conversation is a conversation that's paranoia. This is a neurotic conversation. This is a mild mental disorder playing in your head all the time called neurosis. I really highly recommend that you get on your smartphone and ask it to define the word neurosis and really look at that definition and let yourself understand that this is what's been happening to you. This mild mental condition is what's been happening to you instead of your life, right? And so meditation is the beginning of a process to come out of this condition. It's the beginning of a process to come out of this condition. And the reason it's so difficult to establish a meditation practice is because of the neurosis, because of the voice in your head, right, that does not want you to be inconvenienced. It wants life to be easy. It wants you to be comfortable. And anytime it's not easy or it's not comfortable, that's not for you. Right? And so if you go to practice meditation and you don't feel comfortable sitting there exposing yourself, maybe for the first time, sitting there exposing yourself to what it's like to be with that voice, and what it's like to experience that you can't get away from it. You try and pay attention to the body breathing, and your attention keeps jumping back to the voice, keeps jumping back to the voice. And so for somebody who hasn't practiced very much and doesn't understand how meditation works, that can be very disturbing, right? So the voice would then come up with a conclusion about it and saying, oh, this doesn't feel comfortable. You were just sitting there with a racing mind the whole time. This isn't for you. Don't do this. Go do something that's comfortable. Go have a beer. Go watch some football. Go do something that gives you immediate payoff. Go have some sex. So life becomes about chasing pleasure and avoiding pain, right? That's not a very satisfying life, right? Because you have to be all the time doing this push-pull operation, If it's pleasurable, I want more of that. So I got to give that more time and energy. If it's uncomfortable, I got to avoid that, and I got to be on the lookout for anything that indicates I might be uncomfortable and stay away from that. And that's how human beings are living their life. And if somebody gets in my way of doing this process all day long, right, then I have to get them out of my way because they're interfering with my process of experiencing what I want. The only problem with that process is that it doesn't work. You can continue to do that day in and day out, week in and week out, year in and year out, and you still feel that something's missing. You still feel that you're not experiencing this state of well-being. And you can experience this state of well-being as long as you are in the condition of neurosis, as long as you're in the condition of believing that your personality is what you actually are. As long as you're in that condition and living in the stories of your life as that personality, there is no well-being available to you. The only possibility for well-being is to experience the truth. The only possibility for well-being is to move your attention away from this neurotic voice in your head, practice relaxing physically and mentally, and allowing yourself to begin to see things as they actually are, not the way you've been thinking they are. Allow yourself to discover your true nature, not the identity that you have been thinking that you are, which is the body and the personality. So this is a challenging practice. It's not something that's going to come to you. It's not something like just taking a psychedelic. A psychedelic, may give you a brief experience of what it's like to be free from you. Taking a psychedelic may give you a brief experience what it's like to have this voice filtered out for a brief period of time, so you experience what it's actually like to be here in your life and enjoy that experience. But that's temporary, it won't last. Right? And we can't just get up in the morning and keep taking LSD. That's not going to work, right? Because all of the ways that we use or that artificial means to change our experience have consequences, right? The body doesn't like taking LSD all the time. The body doesn't like drinking alcohol all the time. The body doesn't like all the things that we do in access to escape what we think is a negative experience of being alive. See, that's one of the problems, that the personality has this belief about life that life is difficult, doesn't it? Personality has this belief about life that life is threatening, that life is dangerous. And that's why I want to stay in bed. All right? That's the personality wants to stay asleep. The personality wants to stay in bed. It doesn't want to get up in the morning because life is difficult. Life is threatening. Life is challenging. Life wears me out. Life doesn't deliver the goods. And that's why I have to put up with it and then have some time each day where I can go and somehow alter my experience or distract myself enough to have some peace, or at least as much peace as possible under those conditions. Maybe watch some television. So that's not a life worth living, Plato said an unexamined life is not worth living. So if you examine your life, you'll see there is something missing here. If the average person examines their life, they'll notice something's missing, and what they will attribute to what's missing, right, is the circumstances they are in or the other people, isn't it? Right? When people come to me in psychotherapy and they tell me why they're there, what their problem is, The story is always the same story. It's the circumstances or other people. You know, I'm here because they're driving me crazy, and I'm here because I'm under difficult circumstances in my life. It might be some kind of physical ailment, right? It may be the loss of the job. It may be the death of a close one. They're all circumstances, right? Yeah. So people live a circumstantially derived existence. You know, in other words, how I am depends on my circumstances. So if you ask somebody how they're doing and they tell you, oh, I'm doing great, the next thing they're going to tell you is the circumstances that allow them to be doing great. Right? So if you're living a circumstantial life, your life is not going to be a life of workability because circumstances are unstable and circumstances are always very challenging. That's just the way life is. So if you want to experience a life worth living and you want to be happy and satisfied and fulfilled and experience a state of well-being, you've got to begin to practice something that will get you out of the condition that you're in. And that's meditation. And if you practice formal meditation, you're actually practicing the practice of something. The formal meditation in itself is not the answer. It's the practice of practicing something. And when you get good enough at the practice of practicing what meditation is, right, then you can begin to do it all the time. It can become an informal practice. And when you begin doing it all the time, that practice is the practice that will bring you out of the sleep. That's the practice that will bring you into an awake state. You've got to begin to punctuate your ordinary life with moments of awareness. Right? So you've got to start to practice. After the formal practice is sufficient that you know what you're doing, then you can go into your informal practice, which is your ordinary everyday life, and as many times as you can remember to do it during the day, allow yourself to experience moments as awareness, resting as awareness, moments as awareness, short moments of resting as awareness as many times as possible during the day. And by doing that over time, you will eventually cause a shift. You'll eventually cause a critical mass to occur in which the awake state is more than the sleep state, in which the true nature that you are is there more than the personality is. Yeah, and if you do this under all circumstances, that's critical, under all circumstances, so you can discover that even when the personality is very upset, the awareness can be calm, relaxed, and content at the very same time that the personality is upset. This is called the balanced way of living, right? That you can get to a place where you know that the awareness and the personality are the same thing. That's called non-duality. Therefore, you can experience being that which is never upset, that which is always still, never moves, always satisfied, content, and peaceful, even when the activity is occurring. So you can practice the informal practice under all circumstances. In the formal practice, we're working on getting good at it, you see, so we want to eliminate a lot of the interference. But once you get good enough at it, right, then you can practice in the middle of Times Square and not be affected by all the activity. That's the goal. And if you get to that place, right, now you're in a position to experience well-being under all circumstances, because your well-being is not coming from the circumstances, it's coming from your state of being. It's coming from your state of awareness, which is the only place well-being exists. So meditation is a challenge. The first challenge of it is to do it formally every day without fail. And if you get good enough at doing that, the next phase will almost happen naturally, is to do it all the time. To be what you are consistently instead of visiting it with psychedelics or visiting it with lucky situations that happen where you get a glimpse of the truth.